Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Substance livestream. My name is Wes, and I will be your host. And I am thrilled to have Magdalena joining me on the show today. She is a senior creature modeler at Framestore. In today's stream,
Hello.
hey, Magdalena. In today's stream, Magdalena is going to walk us along a fine line between cute and creepy and showcase a personal project she created for the Substance team. And so, hello, Magdalena. Welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Hi again, and nice to see you.
Yes. Okay, so before we get started, I want to mention that I am recording the stream, so there is a lot of internet traffic these days with everybody working from home. So if we do have any interruptions or lag, we'll upload an uninterrupted version after the stream. Also, I want to mention that we have Vincent, our amazing Substance community manager, will be monitoring the chat, and we will have a Q&A session after the presentation. Also, I want to mention that on our last live stream, it was Vincent's birthday, and I forgot to wish him a happy birthday. So,
Hey,
Vincent,
happy birthday.
happy belated birthday, man. See, I got it on this live stream, and I forgot it on the last
Happy
one.
birthday, Vincent.
All right, so with that said, Magdalena, let's jump into it. Go ahead and share your screen, man. We can't wait to see what you have for us.
Okay, so hope you see my screen right now.
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So, hi, my name is Magdalena. I'm a character artist and a creature modeler, currently working at Framestore. This is some information of where you can find me. I would definitely say Twitter is the best place to interact and also see the stuff that I'm interested in. And you also have my art station and Instagram for some art sharing. So I've been in this industry for about 14 years now, working on all sorts of projects. This is some of the projects I had the pleasure of working on, both film and video games, a lot of realistic stuff and a bit of fantastical stuff. So definitely down my alley. Although the last project that I'm currently working on is a complete departure from everything that I've done. I'm working on a Tom and Jerry feature film. So something a bit more cartoony for a change. And something that I can do a little bit of texturing on, because normally on films I don't. The project I will be talking to you about is the Mandrake project, which I was approached by Algorithmic to do basically whatever I wanted, which is like the best type of thing you can be asked to do, no restrictions. And a Mandrake was a instant thing that I came up with because I've had it in the back of my mind for a while already. I'm a big Harry Potter fan, so I thought Mandrake would be super fun to sculpt, a baby that's also kind of a plant. And this is what we came up with. And I'm really happy that Algorithmic was down with doing something so creepy like a distorted baby. I know that some people got really terrified when they saw that, but I thought it would be a cool idea. And also, sculpting a baby is always a challenge. I really wanted to do something a bit more realistic in the face, but still distorted in the body, and play around with a plant-like look. I knew that because of time restrictions, I had to use some ready-made materials. So I thought it would be a good idea to use some substance source materials because there's a lot of cool plant and moss type of materials already there. And just in showing that you can incorporate them into the project without just filling a layer and leaving it like that. So adding a bit of variety using pre-existing materials. And also, I wanted to try several different new things that I haven't tried before in Substance. I actually didn't even know existed, and I am using them now on some new projects. I wanted to share them with you guys to see what you can maybe incorporate into your own workflow. So some of the things I looked at for this project when I was gathering references were first other artists who tackled the topic of a Mandrake. So you can see I've put some names here. Iris Compete because I'm a big fan of her work, and she inspired me to want to do a mandrake, because she's done it several times already and it's nice and creepy. And also Audrey Benjaminson, I really like the way she distorted the body on the mandrake. Her mandrake is really creepy. Still a bit cute, but really weird. I didn't want to go this far with the bizarre legs and stuff, but I still took a lot from her work. Iron Horus is an artist on DeviantArt that did this funny little mandrake that I really like the leaves of, because it sort of reminded me of beetroot. So I like the idea of something more purpley, red, rather than just beige. And I also looked at some references of old representations of the mandrake, which some of them are really bizarre. Like I think this human body with just an exploding head with lots of leaves and flowers is really strange. And here at the bottom, I just put a couple of artists that are really worth looking at if you're more into texturing and want to learn something more about it. They are special effects artists, so they work in real life. At Casey Love, I especially love the way he approaches texturing. One thing that I remember, I took one of his courses on painting masks. I didn't actually do anything myself, but I just wanted to watch how he does things. And one of the things that stayed with me was that when he said that you want to do stuff like veins always in the opposite direction to the model. So he does that a lot, like the wrinkles on the model go in this direction and then all the veining goes upwards in the opposite direction. That adds like additional dimension to the character. He still highlights some of the creases in his sculptures, but he always adds this additional dimension by going in the opposite direction without highlighting more wrinkles. So I thought that really makes everything more interesting. And Steve Wang is absolute master when it comes to organic painting, and always uses amazing references from real life. Like on his Kerrigan sculpture, I just think it's absolutely incredible the way he used stuff like almost cheetah patterns, but also some insect references. And I would definitely look, if I were you, I would look for stuff on the stuff that he did on Gremlins. Some of the concepts for textures that he did is very organic, and he used like leaves references in the autumn, etc., which really makes everything pop and adds a lot of variety in colors as well. So apart from that, obviously I looked at the real life references, and this image here in the middle, especially, that was the image that made me want to do something colorful and purple. And this is the image I started with. Decided, okay, I love what I see. I love the fact that you have the green, the yellow, the pink, and the purple all in one plant. And you can pick colors from this and start from there, basically, when texturing the model. I also looked at, as I said, beetroots, carrots, ginger roots. I wanted these sorts of details that the ginger root has, like those circles and little bumps on the legs and on the hands. Also, this detail that the beetroot has where the leaves are growing out of the root, this little thing, I wanted something like this on top of the head where my leaves would be coming out. And finally, I looked at some of the leaves on some more exotic plants. They have beautiful outlines on the edges and a lot of coloring detail and nice transitions between colors that I found very interesting and wanted to at least try to emulate. And finally, of course, babies for the sculpting reference and for the faces. Also, lots of flowers. For example, in this picture, can you actually see my pointer when I'm showing?
Yeah, yeah, it looks like
Okay,
I can
okay.
see it from my end. Yeah, I think so. It looks, yeah, you can see
Okay.
it.
I just thought about it because I keep saying this and this, and
Oh no, no, it
so
looks good.
yeah, Good. So this flower at the bottom, what I really love is the transition between the two colors. So the green and the purple, and how they transition between themselves, the complementary colors. So they're on the opposite sides of the color wheel, but still work very well together. And this plant, for example, I really like the cellular effect, and I wanted to try and achieve something similar. This is obviously very busy, but it's a good starting point. And finally, an insect. I looked at a lot of insects. Insects are always an excellent reference for texturing. They're very rich in colors and very rich in texture. Some mushrooms, because I like the cellular effect again. The horses may seem weird, but what I love on those is the way the colors transition between each other. So you have two completely different colors, and this sort of transition between like with bigger details first and then into smaller detail and into the other color. I thought it was an interesting way to try and transition between the two colors. I knew that I wanted the belly of the baby to be yellower, more like a real human, and then the back and shoulders purple. So I needed a nice, soft, smooth transition from one to the other. So basically, don't be afraid to look at stuff that's maybe not completely related to what you're working on, but you can still find interesting ideas in there. Okay, so I think it's time to jump into Substance. And I'm going to show you some of the things that I learned on this project, some of the things that I had no idea existed in Substance before. I'll first maybe tell you a little bit about how I divided my model and why. So you can see my texture sets. There's quite a few of them. I knew that for this project, I wanted to try using automatic unwrapping. So because in automatic unwrapping, when you import the model, you cannot control the texel density right now. So I cannot decide how much texture space I will allocate to, for example, the leg as opposed to the torso. So I knew that I have to control it some other way, which is with the texture sizes. So the more texture maps I have, the easier it is for me to control it. So I have the flowers separately, some grass around the flowers. I just put a bit of geometry there for more interest, and so it looks more busy. And the leaves, as you can see, it's an automatic unwrap. The legs, and that's the problem with automatic unwrapping is you have a lot of free space which you could fill with another texture normally, like another piece of geometry. So you could merge them, obviously, but then it's still a bit of a lottery. So it would be nice to be able to come. That's one of the features I want.
Yeah, I think
Give me control.
Yeah, the team is working to greatly improve this. So we're still kind of in a very early beta state with it. I do believe in 2020, 2020.1 they did add the ability to have some packing. But yeah, I still think they're looking at adding more and more features, also being able to give you more control. But just out of curiosity, so you were using the unwrap, the auto unwrap, and it looks like, did you say that you were adding extra texture sets so that you could help control that density? That was a kind of a workaround for being able to control that density.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So basically, I could texture, for example, render their legs at 2K and the body, the torso at 4K. And that way the detail on the legs wouldn't overpower the detail on the body. Because I found that because the body is technically takes up more space on the whole model, the texture looks fairly low res if I exported them at the same size. So there was more like blurriness. So I had to up the texture of the model of the torso in comparison to the legs, for example, because the legs looked too sharp. And I didn't want them so sharp and so distracting once I was in my renderer of choice, which was Marmoset Toolbag. So that's what I did.
Okay.
especially with the maps, like the texture, the normal maps, etc. So not even the color map, but the maps that I pre-bake in the texture sets. So the normal, the ambient occlusion, etc. So that was my reasoning behind this. The only thing that I wanted to keep more organized was the face, and the faces I actually unwrapped myself with more control, because I was getting a seam across the face. I didn't want that, and I wanted the two faces to blend between themselves and have the same UV set, so I could basically switch between the two. I textured just one of them first and then copied all my layers onto the other one and just cleaned it up and added a bit of additional details on top. So that way my life basically was easier than just texturing both faces separately if the geometry was imported, twice with different UVs.
Oh yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so technically they can blend between themselves, but
Oh wow.
yeah, but you can see that the way I textured the happier one, I actually added a bit lighter colors to it. So I made the mouth slightly lighter and everything like slightly more happy than the sad one, which I made a bit more dark, especially in the mouth area. So he looks a bit more depressed. But yeah, that's basically the general approach to dividing the model. And what I would like to talk about is like how I created all the detailing and some of those cellular effects, and yeah, how you can add a lot of color variation into your model very quickly with some of the new features in Substance, or new to me. Okay, so I'm gonna switch to the torso material, which it might take a bit of time because it's very heavy. I try not to use a lot of like generators, like several generators per layer, etc., because that would make my computer explode. I don't have a super strong machine. So as you'll see, it's very simple texture setup. The final texture, I'm going to isolate the torso. So this is the final texture, and I'm just going to walk you through the things that I did to get there fairly quickly. So I'm going to start with the bump, the normal map, the stuff that came out of ZBrush. There isn't a lot of detail on here because oh, actually, you can see the detail. I actually pumped it up to 4K. That's why it's so heavy. I'm just going to go down to 2K because I don't want my computer to die again. It died today.
Yeah. It always does right before you're going to do a live stream or something.
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to show you guys is how you can improve and add detail to the model with some additional height map painting, and then how you can use that height map painting to add cool texture effects. So using anchor points, which I think is amazing. And I don't see a lot of organic modelers and a lot of people who use characters do that. So I think it's something worth mentioning because I've been playing with it a lot recently. Some of you guys might have seen this blue female face that I did recently, and I played with anchor points a lot on that one. And I think it's an amazing feature that's added to. It's basically like a reference point that you can add. So I'm going to just create a separate new layer here quickly and just make it a height layer. So if you alt click on height, it will just separate this channel from all others. And I'll turn up the height on this thing and add a black mask so I can paint on this. I have symmetry on, so it's easier. And I'm going to grab one brush. The brushes are something I'll mention later, but the new Photoshop brushes are an amazing addition to Substance. There's so much variety and so much cool stuff that you can actually now do with these. So one of my favorites is this foliage brush, because it gives really cool organic effects. So you can play around with it. I'm just going to put it on very roughly, and so you see what I mean. So once you're happy with your normal map, or the height map, sorry, you can like add different height. I'm going to just tone it down a little. I can just grab this mask and add an anchor point to it. And that way it will be a sort of a reference point for all the layers above it that use like smart masks and editors, generators on top. So I'll just call it my plant height. And the cool thing is you don't have to actually use the height. You can just turn it down to 0, and it still just be a reference point for the colors. So for example, if I create a layer on top of my texture stack, that's going to be a color layer only. And I'm going to do something really drastic here so you can see what's happening. And I'm going to add a black mask on top of this layer and use one of the smart masks here. I really like the edge masks, the fabric edge, for example. This is a great one. So what it does is, you see, it highlights all the edges on the maps that we baked before when you import your model into Substance and create all those reference masks, textures. It's using those, but it's not using my little beautiful plants yet. So what I have to do is I have to go into the mask editor and basically reference back to that normal map that I made. So if I scroll down to the very bottom, there is a height, micro height. I'll just pick my plant height. And then I have to go up to a micro details drop down and turn on the height here. And that way I can use my plants that I painted. So now I can always also add to my height map, like add additional details. If I decide, for example, that I want to paint something cool here or here, it will instantly paint with this color that I created. And I can still play around with this mask editor and, for example, blur this detail slightly. And I could duplicate this layer and create another layer with another mask, smart mask on top of it with slightly different color, and reference that to my height layer that I just created. And that way add dimensions to my model. I'm just going to do it, show you what I mean once Substance stops saving.
Oh, the autosave, gotcha. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, as you were saying, the anchor points, it's an amazing feature. It's one of my favorite parts of Substance Painter. I use it all the time. And although it may seem like, it's a bit of a technical setup, but once you have it set up, I mean, the power of what you can do with it is just, it's almost unlimited. I mean, there's so many different ways to use it.
And the thing is, like, you really get confused at first how it works. Like, I was really confused. I couldn't understand until I found, like, okay, it's just referencing that layer. So it's fairly straightforward. And it's only using normals or height map. But like I said, you don't have to actually turn it on. You can just paint that height. I'm just going to tone it down, and it still will use the color. And the great thing is you can reference it using many different layers. So you can create several layers that will reference this pattern over and over again, and that way build up a lot of detail on top of each other. So I think it's absolutely incredible, and it's well worth using for characters as well. And you can create additional details on your normal map, like bumps and stuff, and like weird scales or weird skin details. And it will basically read that detail still, so you don't have to sculpt everything in ZBrush. So if I create another black mask here and add, let's dust. I don't think actually not sure all the editors actually have that property. Do they? I don't think they do. I think I came across a few that don't.
There could be some of that we had that were kind of legacy from maybe Painter version 2 or so that don't. But yeah, I don't know. Personally, I haven't run into one that doesn't. But yeah, there very well could be.
Yeah, but I think if you start building up like several different colors on top of each other, you can add a lot of depth and detail to the patterns. I like to use it also with not just hand painted detail, but like pattern. For example, in alphas, you have several really cool little like diamond pattern, heart patterns, all those little crosses and stuff. If you use, for example, something more abstract and gold materials and start layering it up, it really adds a lot of cool effects that are very original, and you don't see them everywhere. So I think it really adds something different to your model. So this is one of the things that I really wanted to show you guys, and I think it's really worth trying out on characters.
Yeah,
as well as like mechanical bits.
that's really cool. Plus, once you have this set up, you have almost like this little procedural kind of network of, you can go back, like you said, you can paint new details, make changes, and it updates everything you have linked or referenced.
Exactly. So you can layer up several different layers and it will alter everything. Once you paint on the original layer, all of them will update simultaneously. So you don't have to redo stuff, which is always great. And for this character, just like if you've seen any of my tutorials before on skin painting, I like to start with the base skin material, which is one of the materials that are originally in Substance Painter, like this human base skin. And it gives you a little normal map detail. So if I just make a new fill layer and grab one of those materials, it gives you a bit of normal map detail. As you can see, like a little bumpy detail. So I just bring it down in scale. And it gives you a base color to start off with. And because I was starting doing something that's a bit humanoid still, I wanted to have this base skin detail to start off with. And on top of that, I started picking from that image that I showed you guys, the leaves image, the colorful leaves. So I started with the darker colors. I always start with like the darker tones first and build up to lighter tones. And what I did is I just used the fill color with a simple black mask and the Photoshop brushes that there's so many of, and they give really cool effects. For example, this hatching brush. If you start layering things up like this with different size, and you can play around with the settings of the brush, so you can have more use the pen pressure and vary the sizing of it, so it will and just go in and out. So I like to like slap it on and brush it on and erase it and use for example, Kyle's, again, the foliage brush that I showed you before. I think it creates really nice organic detail, and with different size of the brush, you can make nice transitions between the colors. So once you have one layer of darker color, you can go in with a brighter color on top and basically do the same type of thing with a lighter one. So you can see I have a lighter purple on top and then a pinker color on top. And again, dark one with cavity map. So the old trick of using a cavity map in the fill layer, which I've probably showed a lot of times, so there is no need to repeat that. But you can, adjust your cavity map. Again, another red layer and some lighter belly.
So Magdalena, just for those who are watching who may not have seen it, when you say cavity map, is that something that you're able to bake in Substance Painter or using the baker, or?
Yes. Okay. I'm going to show you. So when you're importing your models into Substance Painter, you then want to bake your mesh maps here in the texture set settings. So when you bake the maps, you can choose several different options, the curvature, position, thickness, and those are the maps that Substance will be referencing a lot for all the procedural masks. But I like to use the curvature, especially myself, just by putting it in the masks. So I'll create a layer, just make it something dark in color. So let's just make it a color layer. Again, you alt click on this little thing. And I'm going to make it like this dark purple, for example. And when I create a layer mask, I'm going to choose a bitmap mask instead of black or white. And then here, I'm just going to type curvature. So it shows me all the curvature maps that were baked for this model, for each part of the model. And because we're working with the torso, this is the torso curvature map. So if I load this, you can see what it does. It basically highlights the top areas and the bottom, like the deepest crevices and the, how do you call that? Like the stuff that's on top, basically. So it does, what I want it to do is I want the dark purple to be in the crevices. So I have to invert this map. And what I'll do is I'll use the levels on top of this and hit invert here. So that way I'm closer to what I want, and then I can play around with the levels to get rid of that purple where I don't want it. So this is what I meant. And I usually also paint on top of this because I don't want all the lines to show. I want some of them to show. And right now it's like too many horizontal lines, for example, on those legs. And I want it to be more organic. So I'll add a paint modifier on that and choose like a organic brush again. You can use the same. And then if I paint in black, I can paint it out in some places. So it's not so obvious. You could also add another modifier, a filter, which is a blur filter, and even soften it a bit more. So it blurs it out and bring down the opacity slightly. So it's still there, but not so obvious. And that again adds a lot of depth to your model. And you can do the same thing with lighter material and then highlight all the top areas of your model. One of the things I like to do is just use a white color on overlay with the same way with the curvature map. And not inverted basically, but highlight the top areas. So do the opposite of what I did here. I hope that explains it.
Yeah, thanks, Magdalena. That's awesome. It's a great little detail.
So yeah, that's basically what I did. I added more and more simple layers. And one other thing I use, as you can see, I use the metal edgeware, which is basically one of the smart masks. So instead of a simple, I'm going to show you, instead of a simple black paint mask, I would just use one of those edge materials, like edge masks. For example, these edge strong, which is great for non-organic modeling, but I like to use it too on my character. So if I go to my mask and just play around with the settings, I can make it subtle and I can make it blend better by changing the opacity, or and that way highlighting tips and still putting a paint modifier on top to just erase it where I don't want it. So for example, I want it on some of those little dots that stick out of the body, or like on those little dots and pimples that he has on the shoulders, but not anywhere else. So I think that these smart masks that you would maybe use on a car or something can really work well on a character as well. And then again, layers with just black mask and some simple color details. Which brings me to another thing that I learned recently, I didn't know existed, which is the gradient builder. So one thing that I wanted to try first, if I create a simple paint layer, not a fill layer, but a paint layer, one thing I wanted to try was this gradient hue tool. So what this does, it basically just makes a gradient stroke based on this gradient hue color here. And this is cool, but I wanted my own colors. So I totally didn't realize that there is a way of doing it. And when you click here and try to replace this with, so I searched for gradient, and what I found is there is a gradient builder. So that gives you an ability to choose your own colors. So I can choose the colors that are actually on my character or close to what my character looks like. And you can blend between those. So basically show like how much influence each of those colors has. So you can see it on this little ball. And then with any brush that you like from Photoshop, I'll go to my foliage because it's my favorite. You can just paint on top of your model with these colors. And that is another way, like if I press harder, it gives me a larger stroke. That is another way to add a lot of color variation to your model. Going back to my layers. You can just tone it down and blend it in. Or you can, obviously you can choose your colors better than I did here and make it prettier. You can play with like screen or overlay for different variations and really go to town and start layering those up. So that way you can have a lot more color variations with one stroke. This is something that was in Photoshop for a long time, like some brushes you can build with color variation in them. So they would change the hue. And this is basically something similar that you can do while also using any of the cool brushes that are here by default. So the possibility of like really happy accidents is quite good. And don't be afraid to just build it up and play around with it and go in and out and blend stuff. I think it's great. Okay, and yeah, another thing that when I was showing you references, I really wanted to try and have like a nice cellular effect that plants have on this model. And I found a couple of cool ways. Couple of cool ways of doing that. I think my favorite one was using this procedural called the whirly noise. So if I turn on my final layer so it looks prettier, you can see here, I use this sort of cellular effect on the belly. And to get that, what I did was I just created a simple fill layer again with the color that I liked. I'm going to do this with something dark, so it works better with a darker color. And again, create a black mask on top. And what I'm going to fill this black mask with is I'm going to add a fill. And here in the grayscale, I'm going to put in the procedurals this whirly noise procedural, or I think that's how you read it. So what this gives you is this sort of almost like a sickly look.
Yeah, it's like a disease
I love
filter.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
disease filter, exactly. And you can invert it, so it gives you a bit more plant-like thing. And also there is a noise parameters. So for the scale, use this instead of the projection parameters, because once you start messing with the projection size, it will distort this pattern, no matter if you're using like UV projection or triplanar projection. So yeah, this one I absolutely love. It's like, it gives you a really cool effect. And if you were to, for example, texture a plant, I think in the leaves and in the flowers, you can add this as a background just on very low opacity and get very cool effects. And again, you can just add the paint on top of this and erase where you don't want it. So you don't have to have it everywhere. You can get rid of it in some places.
That's
So
really
that was
awesome.
my one of the new ways of. Yeah, it's really cool, and it just sits there. I've never even tried any of those cubes. I didn't know what to do with them before.
Yeah, those are the 3D noises. I think they started, or they shipped with one version of Substance Designer, and then we added them over to Painter as well.
Yeah, I really like this. And also another one which is great is the when you make another fill layer with a bit of a different color, for example. Green. And I'll make it a color, so I don't want the specularity to be distracting. That's one thing I always texture with, is without the speck. I don't want it there. Unless I'm texturing something non-organic, then it's nice. I'm going to add another layer, yeah.
I'm sorry, Magdalena.
You had a
Do
question?
you usually start with color then? Like, is that what you look for first? Is work up the color and then work on the roughness and things like that?
Yeah, that's how I got used to working, especially with Substance. I really like to first build up the color and then work on the other stuff. And you can work on the other stuff after you have the color. There is actually this pass-through method when you can just collapse your colors, sort of, and desaturate them and create a base for everything else. I can show you later.
Okay.
But yeah, I like to build the color. So yeah, I'll create another fill and added a black mask, and I'm going to add a fill in this black mask. And there's also these cool cell procedurals here. So I'll just put one of those inside here. Oh, and another thing I didn't say about on the whirly noise, those things very often have is additional options, like different types of noises, different parameters. So you're not just restricted to one. You can play around with these and blur them, etc., and start playing around within each of those. So I definitely, recommend just experimenting. And
Yeah.
again, with the cells one, you can randomize it. You can invert it again, and it gives you another nice sickly. But it kind of looks like a plant here.
Yeah.
When you look at the purples and greens, there is those like cup-looking plants. I don't know what their name is, but they have this sort of effect on them. So
Yeah.
on this project, I found that I wanted, for example, a lot of details like this on the leaves. And I tried doing all those edge effects and stuff, and realized that it's just too much happening, and it was just drowning the rest of the character. So I had to keep it simple. I still have like different size of cells, so you can see the cells here, and I have like bigger ones here, and you can see all the color spots. That's basically the color gradient, and just different colors on top of each other. And all those lines here, I just made them twice. So I made one layer and blurred it, and then another layer, and that was sharper on top. So that gave me more dimension to the texture, and just added a little bit of outline with the brush around. But I found that although it works in real life, in the character model, it was just way too much. So this was one of the big lessons: just keep it simple. So yeah, this is definitely those cellular effects are really fun to play around with. And final one that I wanted to show you that's pretty cool too is this. In the tools, there is also the cracks brush thing. I don't know if it's like what to call it, brush tool. But
Yeah, so the tool is basically like a combination of things, like a brush. Like you could have a brush, an alpha, and a material, and you can save all that as a tool. So just for those who are maybe watching new to Substance, like if you had a very special, like, okay, I set up this brush and this alpha and this nice material, and you want to save that, you can save it as a tool just by right clicking in the palette, and then you can use it on any other project.
yeah, this one is really cool too, and also gives like a lot of dimensionality because it has the dynamic strokes on it. So you can make it goes from random seed. So some of it will be bigger, some of it will be smaller. And once you start blending it with like different opacity, you can also add a lot of detail on the skin very quickly. Yeah, that's it. I think I went very fast.
That's okay. Yeah,
So,
I mean, really cool stuff. I mean, we still have some more time, so if there's any other parts that you want to showcase or
oh,
anything, you still have time.
yeah, I can. Cool. I can definitely show you something else. One of the other things that I wanted to use, one of the other features, were basically materials from the internet, or Substance source to be quite precise. So once I built the basic layers for the branches, for example, I used one of the materials that I think it comes with Substance. It's a piece of wood, so it's like a stylized wood material, a wood chest. So the only thing I changed was a little bit the color of the base of the wood, but kept the same thing. The rest of it the same. So you can see I can just build up the wood effect very quickly. And I don't have to think about what the wood would look like and etc. It's just there ready for me. And also I downloaded a few from the Substance source. I downloaded a few of the bark materials and the moss ball, because I wanted like mossy effects on the branches. So this is, for example, a bark material that I just painted with, and I built detail up with like crevices, and as you can see here, I have the additional highlights, which is exactly white layer with overlay on top of it, and another layer to brighten up his belly, and more like moss from Substance source, because this one has a really nice effect, and it also has a height. So it gave me, I knew I wanted some fiber mesh on top of this in the final renders. So if I show you you can see it here. It has a bumpiness, but it's also a bit hairy because of the fiber mesh out of ZBrush that I exported.
Oh,
And I
okay.
exported
I
it
see it.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically geometry on top. There isn't a lot of it because the material itself has a lot of height, so a lot of variation. So once they're put together, it works very nicely.
So you just added the fiber mesh, well, we'll say mesh, at the end in your final render stage. Like, what did you render in for your final rendering?
In Marmoset Toolbag.
Okay.
So
you.
it was
Oh, you just
real
put them
time.
together there. Okay, gotcha. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I just basically exported it out of ZBrush directly. It didn't need texturing. The thing with fiber mesh, it has its own UVs. So what I did is I plugged in the textures that I made for the body into the
Oh,
fiber mesh,
yeah.
and it worked very well.
That's cool.
Or a simple color. I think for the moss, I just added the simple color texture, not the texture, but just the color into the material.
Okay.
But for the body, because the body had some fiber mesh in some places, just so it sticks out, I just added the body texture on top of it, and it worked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, super simple, but it looks very complex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And yeah, this is like another light layer with overlay just to highlight some areas, and basically that's it. That's all I've done to this texture. For the faces, it's basically the same process. So I can show you the face texture in close-up. As you can see, it's just a lot of different brushes, like wibbly wobblies, and different colored layers, like fill layers with different colors. And that's basically all. Not even a lot of like special smart masks or anything on the face. It's mostly just hand painting.
Okay. For the UV layout on the face, you said you did that manually. Did you do that in ZBrush, like UV Master, or somewhere else?
I used ZBrush and just masked like where I wanted the cuts to be, and I laid it out in Maya.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I wanted it to be laid out so the face has the biggest amount of detail. So the face is slightly larger in textile density than the rest. I like to cheat.
Yeah. I think that's the basis of all art, right? Like some kind of cheat somewhere.
Yeah, especially for projects like this, which is basically an experiment and a little bit of concept art rather than something for production. You can really do anything and experiment a lot, and
Yeah.
don't be afraid to just go wild. Yep, I think that's it. For the legs, I did basically the same process, just a lot more of the bright greens and instead of purples, because I wanted the grassy look. And again, I piled up the barks. Its Substance is saving again. Yeah, I piled up like green mossy colors and picked them from images, and also picked from what I already painted. That's one of the coolest things about Substance Painter. You can always pick from an image, a reference image that you have outside,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that too is that color pick option. I don't think it's supposed to work that way. I think it's supposed to be like this material pick, but I use it that way as well. So I don't know. I'm sure we have plans to improve that a lot, but it's funny how that's not the intended use of it, but it works great for that.
Yeah, it's like the best thing about it, because I don't think any other software has that feature. I've never seen it before in anything. So if I, drag across from this with a picker, it will pick from anywhere outside my screen. For those who like haven't tried it yet, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's super valuable because you can just pick from your reference at any time.
Yeah. And like I said, I like to start with a simple image. Like here, this is the image that I started with. And I basically started picking from this one. So that way you have a bit of a idea of the colors that you want to use, and you're not in the dark, or maybe this will work, or maybe this will work together. They work because you have the image.
Yeah.
You have evidence.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. If you have any more questions.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, Magdalena. So yes, we can run into the actual Q&A portion of that then. So yeah, we'll just jump right into that. So I know Vincent's been in our stream. He's been compiling a few questions. So bear with me for a second. Let me just bring this up. Okay, and all right, let's jump into some of the Q&A, and then also for anyone listening out there in the chat, this is the best time to start posting in your questions. And like we said, Vincent's he's sending those over to us as we talk. So Magdalena, I actually want to start with a question I have first. Just so I noticed that like when you first started, you went through your reference and you showcased that. And I know that reference is such a very important part of the stage, but I kind of wanted to ask you just on your own personal artist level, like I seem to get stuck in this reference phase. Like I'll find reference and then I'll look at it and then I'll start to get like kind of worried or concerned, like, am I borrowing too much from the reference? Wait a minute, did I copy it too much? How much can I borrow? How much can I not? Sometimes I'll look at other artists for inspiration, and then I get really afraid to do that because I'm actually so afraid that I'm going to borrow too much from someone else's inspiration. You know what I mean? And I don't know if it's just a problem I have, but I just get
I think it's a problem.
Yeah, like how do you handle that? Like for me, I get stuck in that phase, and I have a hard time getting out. Like, what do you do?
Okay, so you mean it stops you from going on?
Yeah, I seem to kind of get stuck there because it's like, so I just was wondering like how do you get past that? Like how what's your process?
I don't think I get stuck by that. I get stuck with having too many references, so I start searching and maybe this or maybe that or maybe this, and then I'll start, and then I'll find another reference which is in a completely different direction, and I'm like, oh, maybe this. So I'm constantly distracted by the shiny.
Yeah.
The new.
Yeah, I get that too. Yeah, I get that too. Yeah. But like,
Yeah.
what do you think, like, in terms of how do you balance like how much to be, I guess, inspired by? Like when you look at reference, how much is there? Like, how do you know when, okay, I pulled too much from the reference, or I poured? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have that problem? Like, how do you get past that?
No, I never thought about it that way.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting.
I just try things, and I think it's basically I started by trying those things, and then it just starts evolving into something else because it may look cool on the reference, but I'm like, no, I don't like this on the model. Like I had that problem with the leaves. I really love the way those leaves in real life have so much detail on the edges, and different color variations and stuff. But once I started doing exactly that, it just looked horrible on the model. It was overpowering the face. You couldn't see the face anymore. All you see the leaf.
Okay. Yeah. Good point.
I'm like, okay, it looks cool on the leaves, on the plant alone, but it just doesn't work with the face next to it. So yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, that's good. So like you're saying, you just kind of let it lead itself in a way. Like you just start working through it, and it really comes down to experimentation and just getting out there.
Just try.
Yeah. I think maybe that's the problem I have. I get afraid to try. I'm like, oh, what if I fail? Which I guess maybe other people get like that too. But yeah,
overthinking it at the beginning.
Yes. Okay, so some other questions that came in our chat. One of them was asking if you could show how this looks using iRay inside of Painter. I don't know if it would set up to work that way, but have you tried like rendering with iRay in Painter?
I wasn't. It's not set up at all. No. I've tried it. I've used it before with other projects, but this project I didn't mean to from the beginning, so I don't think it will look great out of the box.
Yeah.
It will probably look horrible because I haven't set up the lights and the shadow, but we can try if it doesn't explode. And I should probably turn on the skin shader as well. Iray is warming up. Whoops. Oh, I have two faces on top of each other, and there is no way of turning them on either.
Yeah, that's right.
Off in Substance. That would be nice. That would be nice too, actually. That's a feature I want.
Yeah. So once it goes into iRay,
like when it's turned off in here, everything is on. Yeah, exactly. So I didn't set it up to render it in Substance Painter, basically. So it won't work nicely.
Okay, well that's no problem. So let's see. While that's we'll let iRay kind of do its thing, and then we'll go on. But just moving on to the next question, like what is the poly count? Do you know what that is off the top of your head, or an idea of how dense the model is?
No, that's the one thing about me, that I never look at the poly count. If it's working, it's working.
Okay, yeah, good.
If it's crashing, then it means it's too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never looked at poly counts.
Okay, when you export,
it's a triangulated mesh because with this project, for example, with this project, for example, I was doing it back and forth. So I actually did export it from Substance Painter at one point and went back into ZBrush and sculpted on the triangulated mesh in ZBrush.
Okay.
And went back into Substance Painter. So yeah, I don't care about what this mesh looks like. I can show you like how heavy it is if I just turn on the wireframe. Like, it's not super heavy, but as you can see, the face is nice quartz, but the body is triangulated.
Okay,
in Substance.
When you export out of ZBrush, are you using the OBJ export, or do you use the ZBrush FBX export?
I use the OBJ, and then I put it into another software package to apply the materials, pack it up nicely, and then export it. So I have the nice naming on the materials and everything.
Okay, awesome.
The way I want it. So then the texture sets are like clean instead of being a mess. And I also want to make sure that all the material, like all the pieces that I want to be on the same texture set are on the same texture set. So I have to organize it somewhere, like Blender or Maya.
Okay, so kind of a follow-up question to that. This one was talking about the model, how it was made, and so let's see. You have it's basically asking about retopology, like manual retopology, seam for UV. Did you do any retopology for this? I guess they're asking, or is retopology plus UV master from ZBrush? Like when you export your OBJ, you said, did you have to do any retopology work?
Yes, for this. On this face, no, it's Z-remeshed in ZBrush.
Okay, awesome.
I just made sure that I used curves to Z-remesh it. So I used like some guide curves around the eyes and around the mouth. So it Z-remeshed it nicely. And I had nice loops in those places. But yeah, it's a ZBrush topology.
Oh, I see. Okay. Magdalena, let me check. Are you hearing me okay? I think you and I might have just a slight bit of a delay. Are you hearing my questions okay?
Yeah, I think there is a delay because I can hear you very well, yeah.
Okay.
But I see the delay myself too.
Okay, all right, no worries. Okay, here's a question about the tiers. Like, how were they made? Like, you had tiers in the renderer. Like, can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, the tiers are just a separate piece of geometry done with Dynamesh quickly. and I just applied a glass material to them. That was it in Marmoset directly, so I didn't do any texturing on them.
Okay. Okay, and this other question that came in, I think it kind of related to what we've already covered.
It was very simple.
Oh. This other question, I think it was kind of related to what we've already covered, but did you bring in your high-res model to start texturing from? Which I think it is, right? It's just you didn't care about the poly count, it's just the high-res mesh.
No, to bake, do they mean to bake the texture sets?
It doesn't.
I exported the high-res meshes.
Okay.
To link to.
Okay.
Yeah, I exported the high-res meshes, and then I linked to the high-res meshes here in the baking.
Yes. Okay, that was the question.
So the textures are baked from the highest level.
Okay. So you baked the high-res.
Yeah, so I exported both the low-res, which went into Substance Painter, and the... Yeah.
Okay, so Magdalena, I think that's pretty much all the questions we have for right now. So we can kind of start to close out. Did you? I guess you showed everything you wanted to show.
Cool.
And if you can, just go ahead and stop your screen share.
Yeah,
and
I think I sped up a bit.
Oh, that's okay. No, it's still over an hour, so that's pretty good. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. One more question that just came in here while you're here. It was saying, let me bring us over to our screen.
Okay.
So when you did your map export for rendering Marmoset, what did you export? I think you're screen sharing, Magdalena. You can shut that off.
For rendering in Marmoset. I just. Yeah, I turned. Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
I basically exported maps from. Yeah. I just used the basic export textures from Substance.
Oh, okay. Great. And so I guess
plugged those textures into a shader in Marmoset.
Were you using the I guess physically or I guess the metal rough workflow, or were you using spec gloss?
Yeah, the metal roughness. No, metal roughness.
Okay, awesome. Well, Magdalena, thank you so much for joining us today, and we can go ahead and close this out. So I honestly just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Magdalena, it was an honor to speak with you, and it was amazing to see your work. I mean, this just turned out awesome. Everyone in the Substance team on the marketing side, we were looking at the images all the time. We just thought it was really cool. So we were really thankful that you were able to create this for us.
Thank you for not being... Yeah, and thank you for not being creeped out. And also to everyone who's watching, thank you for not being terrified.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and close out the stream, everyone. So thank you again for joining us on this live stream that we had today. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, and we will see you next time. Take care.